Hey guys, welcome back to coding stuff, and in this video we're gonna build multiple recycler views inside one recycler view. So that is multiple recycler views in MultiViewType RecyclerView. So if you don't know how MultiViewType RecyclerView works, you can check out my previous video. In that video I have explained how MultiViewType RecyclerView works. So link is in the I button and also it is in the description box. So yeah, and if you know how MultiViewType RecyclerView works, you can stay here. So let us have a look at the app that we're gonna build in this video. Okay, so as you can see, we have this whole as a recycler view, and in this recycler view we have the another recycler view, which is horizontal recycler view, as you can see, right? And that is the banner, so it's just an image. Then we have another recycler view, as you can see. So overall we have two types of views. One is the recycler view and another is this banner, right? And when you look at the recycler views, we again have two types of recycler views. First is this one and another is this one, clothing recycler view. So you can have multiple recycler views as well. It's totally depends on your requirement, and if you learn how to do it with 2 or 3 recycler views, you can do it with many recycler views. Okay, so let's start with the coding part now. So in the activity main, first I'll add a recycler view. So a recycler view will provide it width and height as 0 dp. Right, then we'll just close the project view. I'm gonna provide id to it. So id will be equals to, let's name it as a main recycler view. Then we're gonna constrain it horizontal in parent and vertical in parent. Alright, and then what I will do, I'll go to the build.gradle app level. We're gonna enable the view binding. So to enable view binding, right, build features, and inside that view binding equals to true. Cool. Then I'll click on sync now. Okay, so the project has been synced. I'll close the build.gradle app level and we'll go to the main activity first. We'll initialize our binding. So for that I'll create one late init var for our binding, and that will be equals to activity main binding. All right, this one. Oh, sorry. Var, and yeah, then we'll initialize the binding. So binding equals to activity main binding dot inflate. We'll need to pass layout inflator. Then inside this set content view, I'm gonna write binding dot root. Okay, cool. Then we'll set some properties to our recycler view. So binding dot main recycler view, set as fixed size, will pass the true. Then binding dot main recycler view will set the layout manager. So linear layout manager, we need to pass this as a context there. All right. So at the start, what we're gonna do, we're gonna define some constants in order to identify which item to display. So for that I'll go to the package, I'll create new Kotlin class and we'll name it as a data item type, and inside this class we'll have one companion object static block, and we'll define some constants. So const val, so I'll name this first layout as a best seller, and this as a banner, and this as a clothing recycler view. Cool. So first we have best seller, this will be equals to 0, and then const val, this will be clothing. So clothing equals to 1. I'll duplicate this and this should be C, and I'll name this as a banner and the value would be 2. Right, so yeah, these are the constants. So the tricky part in this video would be creating the data class and creating the adapter. So if you know how MultiViewType RecyclerView works, adapter going to be simple. And you can notice one thing, in this recycler view and in this recycler view, yeah, we have different kind of views, but the data is similar, right? It just have the image and the offer text, and this one also has image and the offer text, right? So we can model this data in one data class. But if in your case you have the offer, image and another description kind of things or validity and all that, you would need to create another data class for this one and for this one, different data classes for these two views, right? But in our case we just have the image and then the text, so I'm gonna model this data in one data class. All right, so let's start with the creating one data class. So this will be parent data class. I'll name it as a data class, sorry, not data class, data item. All right, this should be data class. Let's just make it. Okay, so we'll come back here. First we'll create one data class for our banner, and this banner will take only image, so val image, and this will be of type int. Right, and then we'll have another data class for our recycler items. I'll name it as recycler item, and this will have two parameters. First will be the image of type int, and then another parameter which will be offer of type string. All right, okay, so now the tricky part is we need to model this data inside this data item class, right? And we just have one constructor right over here, and the constructor of the data class must have at least one parameter, so we need to pass one parameter here, and I'm gonna pass view type, whatever the view type it is, pass it as int, so that this data items are our view type. You can consider this constants as our view type. All right, so this is our view type. Then inside this, what I will do, I'll create one var for recycler item list, and this will be of type list of recycler item. I'll make it nullable and we'll make it equals to null, and then I'll create another variable for our banner. So banner, this will be of type banner, and I'll make it nullable as well. All right, in order to model this data in the constructor of this data item, we need to do constructor overloading. Right, we can do constructor overloading in Kotlin as well. If you are coming from Java background, you know how constructor overloading works, but in Kotlin for a data class we must have one primary constructor, and we need to pass at least one parameter inside that, and then we can have one secondary constructor or more than one secondary constructor in this data item class. But the constructor should be delegate everything to our primary constructor. Okay, bear a moment with me, I'm gonna explain it to you. In order to create secondary constructor, we just need to write constructor, then we need to pass a view type of type int. We need to pass this parameter over here as well. I'm gonna explain you, just bear a moment with me. Then we need to pass one list, so recycle item list, and then it will be of type list of recycler item. Right, then we need to write this, and we need to pass the view type. So we are delegating everything to our data item. Okay, just wait. Then we'll write this dot recycle item list, and we need to pass we need to make it equals to the recycle item list that we passed, and then we'll create another constructor for our banner. So view type int, and we'll pass the banner again, similarly this, and view type this dot banner equals to banner that we get passed. Okay, so what we are doing here, we are overriding the constructor. We are having the secondary constructors, two secondary constructors. In Kotlin we need to pass a member or argument of the primary constructor inside the secondary constructor as well, so it needs a way to initialize this view type. Right, so we will be passing the view type over here, then it will make it equals to this view type, so this will be initialized. So that is the whole motive behind the constructor overloading in Kotlin data class. It needs this view type to be initialized, the argument of primary constructor. So to initialize it, we just pass the view type in the secondary constructors. All right, so that is the tricky part, and it is done. So now let's just open the project view. All right, we are done with the data item class. We modeled our data really well, but just add one thing here. But if we had different kind of data in this recycler view and in this recycler view, we could have created another class and we could have created 3 constructors. All right, so yeah, then I'm gonna close this data item, and I'm gonna close this data item type as well, and we don't need the main activity and activity main for now. So what I'm gonna do first, we'll create one adapter class for our main activities recycler view. So I'll name it as a main adapter. All right, he will pass private val data item list of type list of data item. All right, and then this will extend or inherit from, just close the project view, recycler view dot adapter, and we will pass recycler view dot view holder here. All right, okay, so it is asking us to implement those three methods. Implement members, we're gonna implement these three members. All right, and in the get item count we can just return data item list dot size. All right, so first of all we'll start with the, all right, so we will have two types of views in this recycler, in this adapters, that is the recycler item and then the banner. All right, so we'll create two view holder classes for our two types of views. So before creating that, let me just walk you through the layouts. So first we'll look at banner item and each item. I'm gonna explain you bestseller and clothing layout later in the video when we implement another adapter. Right, so the banner item, as you can see, we just have an image view inside the card view to add some elevation and all that. Then we have each item which has the recycler view. All right, and its width is 0 dp and height is wrap content. Cool, so we have two types of view in this adapter, the recycler view and the banner view. So for that, first of all we'll create one inner class for our banner. So I'll name it as a banner view holder, or we can name it as a banner item view holder, and this will take a parameter which will be, let's just make it private val binding equals to banner, and it is of type banner item binding. Then let's just close the project view. This will inherit from recycler view dot view holder. We need to pass binding dot root over there, not banner iv root. So in here we'll create one function which will bind the data. So bind banner view, we can name it as like this, and then we need to pass banner here, which is a data class present inside the data item, as you can see here. Right, then we'll just set the data. So binding dot banner iv set image resources, and we'll get that id of the image from here. All right, that's the simple inner class, that's the simple banner item view holder for you. And then what we'll do, we'll create another inner class for our another type of view, which is a recycler type of view. So I'll name it as a recycler item view holder, and this will take parameter private val binding of type each item binding. Yeah, then recycler view dot view holder, we need to pass binding dot root. Then similarly we need to set the data to our views, but in here we have two different types of recycler items. Right, so let's just close this, and let's just open this two views, two recycler views inside the layout. Sorry, clothing and bestseller. Right, clothing and bestseller. So what we need to do, whatever the recycler view we have in the each item, okay, so whatever the data we get, either it is of type clothing or bestseller, we need to model the data, we need to set the data based on that, whatever the view type we get. So for that we will create two functions, fun bind clothing view, or we can just name it as a clothing recycler view, and we'll pass recycler item. All right, and we'll create another function. Let's just close the project view. We'll create another function which will be fun bind best seller recycler view. Similarly we'll pass the recycle item over here as well. Cool, so what we'll do here, we'll We'll call our binding.child RecyclerView. We'll set has fixed size to true. Alright, we can do this inside the init block as well. So let's just create one init block, and inside this we can just paste this line. Alright, and then we can do one thing. We can set the layout manager. So layout manager, this will be equals to linear layout manager, and so we need to pass the context here. So I'll write binding.root.context, and this will be horizontal view. So RecyclerView dot horizontal. Right, then the false as a reverse layout. All right, so we'll come back here when we create the adapter class for this RecyclerView. But before that, what we can do, we can override get item view type. In here we'll just have one check when data item list of position. We'll check its view type. If the view type is data item type of banner, if it is banner, then we're gonna return data item type, or we can just return the layout r.layout dot each item. If the data item type is, or we can just write the else here. So else return r dot layout dot each item, not here, it should be banner item add. Right, so if the data item type is banner, then we'll return the banner item. If it is not, then we have the two types, which are the RecyclerViews. Both are the RecyclerViews, bestseller and the clothing, that will be covered inside the else statement. Okay, this is giving us warning. Yeah, we can lift out it. So lift return out of when. All right, cool. So get item view type is simple. We just need to identify the view type that we get passed from the data item list. If it is banner, we're gonna return the ID of our banner item. Then we're gonna return the ID of each item. Right, and based on the value that we return from here, we need to inflate the layout. So inside the on create view holder, we can have another when the view type, when the view type is r dot layout dot banner item, we're gonna create one binding variable. Binding equals to banner item binding dot inflate layout inflator from parent dot context. Then another parameter, which will be view group, will pass the parent, and then the false attached to parent. All right, then we can return banner item view holder, and we can pass this binding there. All right, and then similarly we'll have the else part here. So else, inside this else we'll create another, let me just copy these things, we'll paste it over here, and instead of banner item binding, it will be each item binding, and rest of the things will be similar, but we need to change this. So this will be recycler item view holder. All right, so we inflated the layout. Again, we can just lift it out of the return statement to make it more readable. All right, so get item view type is done, on create view holder is done. We are just remaining to call these functions. We need to call these functions inside the on bind view holder. Okay, so here again we can have just one when, where we'll check for the holder. So when the holder is banner view holder, so banner item view holder, if it is banner item view holder, we'll call holder dot bind banner view, and we'll pass data item list of position dot banner. All right, okay, so as it is nullable, we can wrap it with the null check else. So inside this else we'll have another check So when the data item list of position will check for its view type and data item type, yeah, dot, it is bestseller or clothing, we need to check. So if it is bestseller, then we can call holder dot bind. Okay, we need to cast the holder, so we need to cast the holder here. So I'll write holder as recycler item view holder dot bind bestseller recycler view, and we'll pass data item list of position and recycler item list. Okay, so we are passing the recycler item list, and I guess by mistake we just made it as recycler item. Yeah, we need to make it recycler item list, and this should be list of recycle items. And we'll copy this thing and I'll paste it over here. Alright, so this would be happy, but we need to again wrap it inside the let, so we can just do it like that. We'll have the else condition here, else it is a clothing, so I'll just copy this, I'll paste it over here, and instead of calling bind bestseller, we'll call bind clothing recycler view, and our bind view holder is done. So what we are doing here, we are checking for the holder. If the holder is banner item view holder, we're just calling holder dot bind banner view, this function, and it will bind the banner data to the banner view. And if it is else, means it is a recycler item view holder, then we are having another check if the view type is bestseller. If the view type is bestseller, then we're gonna bind bestseller recycler view, else we're gonna bind the clothing recycler view. Right, so now we need to create adapter for our two views, which are clothing recycler view and the bestseller recycler view. We have the image view, and then we have the text view, and inside the clothing layout we have the image view and the text view wrapped inside the card, and you will get the source code in the description box, so you can just copy this layout from there as well. Alright, so we'll go to the package, we'll create another adapter, and I'll name it as a child adapter. Alright, this will take a parameter which will be list, so I can name it as a recycler item list, and this will be of type list. We'll just write a val here, and this will be of type recycler items. Alright, then again we have two types of views here, so this will be also MultiViewType recycler adapter. So RecyclerView dot adapter, and we need to pass the RecyclerView view holder, so RecyclerView dot view holder. Alright, then I'll press Alt Control L and I'll implement the members, so Alt Enter, implement members, implement these three members. Inside the get item count, we'll return recycler item list dot size. Again we'll create two inner classes for our view holder, so inner class bestseller view holder, we need to pass the binding there, so binding bestseller layout binding RecyclerView dot view holder and binding dot root. Alright, and inside this we'll create one function which will be fun bind bestseller view, and we'll pass the recycler item there, so recycler item and recycler item. Cool. Then binding, okay, we need to make it private val, then binding dot bestseller image set image resource and recycler item dot image, then binding dot bestseller text, so dot text this will be equals to recycler item dot offer. Cool. So similarly we'll create another inner class. So inner class, and we'll name it as a clothing view holder. Again, this will take binding as a parameter. So binding of type clothing layout binding. RecyclerView view holder will pass binding dot root. We'll create another function which will be bind clothing view. We'll pass the recycle item there as well, and binding dot clothing image set image resource recycler item dot image, then binding dot clothing offer TV text equals to recycler item dot offer. Alright, so our two inner class are done. Now it's time for get item view type. Alright, so yeah, we need to pass view type here as well. So private val view type int, because we'll get view type over here as well, so we can directly pass it to the constructor of the child adapter. And in here we can just return the view type. Cool. So based on the view passed view type, we can inflate the layout again here. So when the view type is data item type of type bestseller, we can create the bestseller binding. So binding, this will be equals to bestseller layout binding dot inflate, not the bind function, dot inflate layout inflator parent dot context. Then we'll pass the parent as a view group, and attached to root will be attached to parent will be false. We can just return bestseller view holder here, and we can pass the binding. Alright, then we'll have the else, in which we'll pass, we'll create binding for our clothing layout binding dot inflate layout inflator parent dot context, then parent, and then false. We'll just return the binding clothing view holder, sorry, and we'll pass the binding. Alright, so it is done. So now it's time to work on the bind view holder, and in here we'll have another when statement where we'll compare the holder. So if is the holder bestseller, we'll call holder dot bind bestseller, and we'll pass the recycler item list position. Alright, then we can have another is for clothing view holder, sorry, clothing view holder, or we can have else as well. So holder dot bind clothing view recycle item at position. Alright, so our child adapter is done as well. Now we just need to call this adapter from the main adapters, these two functions. Alright, so the thing that we need to pass differently is a view type. So what we'll do, we'll create one instance of the adapter, child adapter. This will be child adapter, and the view type for the clothing will be data item type dot clothing, and we'll pass this list. Right, then we can just set this adapter to our child recycler view. So adapter equals to this adapter. We can copy these things from here, and I'll paste it here. The thing that going to change is the data item type, so this time it will be bestseller. Alright, so everything is done. Now we need to work on the main activity. We just need to prepare the data and add it to this constructor of the adapter. First of all, we'll create one list. So private let it var, I'll name it as a m list. This will be of type array list of data item. We'll initialize it over here. So mList equals to array list. Cool. Then I'll call one function which will be prepare data, in which we'll add the data. So private fun prepare data. Cool. And after calling this function, we can just set this adapter to our main RecyclerView. So adapter equals to, we'll just initialize the adapter first. So val adapter main adapter, we'll pass the mList as a parameter there. All right, and then we can just set this adapter. So now the last thing that we need to do is we need to add the data to our prepare data function. So first of all, I'll create one list for bestseller. So bestseller val bestseller list. This will be equals to array list of type recycler item. Cool. So we'll add some data to it. So bestseller list dot add recycler item. I'm gonna pass some drawable. So r dot drawable dot first will be bags. I'll add the bags and I'll add the offer. So I can write anything. Let me just write up to 20% off. So 20% off. Cool. So now I'll pause the video and I will add rest of the data. Okay, so I have added all the data. First list I have created for bestseller, and I have added bestseller data. Then I have created clothing list data. So instead of creating another list for clothing list, you could have definitely added all the data into this best seller list, because the type is same. But in order to make you understand, I created another list. So I kept the differentiation between these two types of data, or they are same data but they have different views. All right, then in the parent list, which is mList, which has a type of data item. All right, you can see inside that, first I added bestseller list. Then I have added the banner, which is first parameter you can see is a view type. Then the list, the constructor, I guess you remember, right? One constructor for banner, one constructor for recycler item. All right, so yeah, first we are adding the bestseller list, then banner, then clothing, then another banner, then bestseller. I'm just reversing it, then banner. All right, so I guess everything is done. Now it's time to run the app and we'll see it's working or not. So I'll click on the run button. So it is installed and yeah, it is working fine. Let me just scroll this. Okay, we can add a snap helper to this. The way we added data, it is displaying as it is. So what we can do inside the main adapter, we can add a snap helper. So I'll add snap helper for bestseller RecyclerView. Okay, so over here I'll create one snap helper. So val snap helper, and I'll make it as a pager snap helper, this one. All right, then our snap helper dot attach to RecyclerView binding dot child RecyclerView. Cool. Let's just try to run the app again. Okay, so if now I just slide it, yeah, if I swipe it, it will work with the effects of pager snap helper. So yeah, all right, I'll put the source code in the description box. If you have some doubt, you can check with that, or you can comment it below. So yeah, that's it for this video. Do subscribe and thank you for watching.